Censorship-Industrial complex. That's what's going on here. Censorship-Industrial complex. So we've been talking about this. This is one of the things that came out of the Twitter files that Matt Taibbi and the team over at Racket News have been trying to assemble the largest picture of, and I'm calling it like an encyclopedia of narrative management. Because this is all of the different sectors and all the different organizations and all the different interests that come together to create what is being referred to now as the censorship industrial complex. And shout out to Mad Crab for the graphic there. Sure, he spent a bunch of time on that one.
Yep.
Now, this was the original graphic.
Look at this graph.
Look at this graph. And we're going to go into this a little bit more.
Every time I do, it makes me laugh.
All right. So now what I got to do, let's go back to our two-shot. Turn the slideshow off. And
oh my God, dude. You got to stop using that two-shot.
Escape.
When I'm on bunk. That is way too close. I just
That's
looked
what I
up
said.
at it.
That's an up-close and personal shot right there. Like, woo! Hello.
Yep.
All right, so let me zoom in a
like
little
just
bit.
Eyeballs.
Yes, it kind of is. All right, so let's go back to our indie main here.
YepX wants a link to the graph. It's probably in the description.
YepX. You know what? Let me go back to this one. Is this one better? Yes, that's what. Yeah. Why is it doing that? That shouldn't be. All right. Anyway. So this graph, put together by the people at Racket News and MrMoreMedia.com. Shout out to MrMoreMedia.com because this is awesome. So the first thing that drew my eye, of course, were the ones at the top, which were the big tech companies. Google, Facebook, we know all these logos. Pinterest. Pinterest,
yeah.
huh? Yep. Yeah, Pinterest.
Your kids probably know those logos.
All right. I don't know how well you can see all that. I don't know. I can't really zoom in much better, but
you can right click, open image in new tab. First thing, very first thing. There you go now. Yep.
It's a biggie. Whoa. Hey now. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
That works.
All right. So you got your big tech companies, including TikTok, and we talked about how TikTok is not just a Chinese company. All right. And then you've got your government agencies over here. DHS, NATO, CISA, the 77th Brigade, the DOD, of course. This new Foreign Malign Influence Center. We're going to talk about that a little. State Department, DARPA, NSF. All right. And this is like, it's FBI, open up! Huge. All right. Now, another one that jumped off the screen at me here were the Ford and Rockefeller and Open Society Foundations, Koch brothers. So this is a bipartisan look at Omidyar Group. Look at that. And the Knight Foundation. Who are they? And a lot of these companies.
Mafia people.
A lot of these companies and a lot of these organizations like Media Matters for America, NGOs, Bellingcat.
Ooh, Bellingcat. We know them.
Yes, we know them well. Wikipedia and the Wikimedia, Advanced Democracy, etc., etc., etc. All right. Then you've got your fact checkers, quote unquote, and that's like factcheck.org and the Global Disinformation Index. And this is a massive project that's been assembled that's putting all this stuff together, right? Then you've got your think tanks, the ones that put out those reports like the Aspen Institute and the Atlantic Council. They're
Atlantic Council.
Right? And then you've got the academic initiatives like
we've covered this.
The Stanford Internet Observatory.
Specifically, there's a great McLeod article that like talks about if I move my thing to see if it's here. Me and Colin covered it way back on INN News about English Ivy League, Cambridge, or which one's over
Oxford,
there?
Cambridge, Oxford, one of those.
Might have been it.
Oh,
How
look,
that, like, how the
moonshot.
literal,
Mhm.
how literal, deep state, ex CIA, ex FBI, ex military generals, ex like whatever, are like working in these positions of education at these places,
Mhm.
and recruiting members that way,
It's all interconnected.
and also controlling the education that your children get and at college,
Very much so.
you know.
The Hewlett Foundation, all these, the Google News Initiative, of course, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has donated millions to just about every major media organization in the last few
Places like
years.
Kurzgesagt,
Mhm.
Kurzgesagt, and other science influenced content on YouTube. They fund a ton of that.
Yep.
So
So getting back to this article, and I did want to read just the intro. So what they did was they laid out, they're starting to lay out, these are the 50 largest organizations to know, the top 50 organizations that you should know about, the Citizens Starter Kit to Understanding the New Global Information Cartel, how it's all interconnected, and it's going to give you like where do they appear in the Twitter files, how they're connected and who they're connected to, and where do they fit into the entire big picture. And it's really interesting.
yeah.
So, intro written by Matt Taibbi, but this was a collective of Susan Schmidt and Andrew Lowenthal. Shout out to Andrew from Network Effects, Tom Wyatt, Technofog. One of them is like Chasing Tom Clancy, and the other writers are listed at the bottom. But Matt wrote the intro, and he says that on January 17th, 1961, outgoing president and former Supreme Allied Commander Eisenhower gave one of the most consequential speeches in American history. Eisenhower, for 8 years, had been a popular president whose appeal drew upon a reputation as a person of great personal fortitude who guided the United States to victory in an existential fight for survival in World War II. Nonetheless, as he prepared to vacate the Oval Office for handsome young John F. Kennedy, he warned the country it was now at the mercy of a power even he could not overcome. So this is interesting. Until World War II, America had no permanent arms manufacturing industry. I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now it did. And this new sector, Eisenhower said, was building up around itself a cultural, financial, and political support system accruing enormous power. This conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience, he said. And he basically called it a military-industrial complex, as you see here.
Yeah, it's Eisenhower's famous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
This is.
I mean, the thing was, you had places like Colt and Browning and whatever, but they were like isolated, almost like special order kind of stuff. You'd buy, before then, you'd buy stuff like a Sharps rifle. You'd have a gunsmith build you a rifle,
Right.
So they started the manufacturing of that for the West, which is why those guns won the West, but it wasn't necessarily an industry,
Yeah.
like it was beginning to be, but
Yes. So,
World War II definitely solidified that because all those guys got giant government contracts.
right. So Eisenhower was saying we must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties, our democratic processes. Only an alert and a knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals so that security and liberty may prosper together. That doesn't even include the intelligence community and corporations, which then start to really muddy the waters. Now, notice here it says restack quote because this is on Substack. I could put this out and it would make like a little italicized quoted thing and put that out on Substack notes, which is pretty cool. Makes it easy. But Matt, getting back to Matt, he's saying that this was the direst of warnings, but that the address has tended in popular press to be ignored. After 60 plus years, most of America, including most of the American left, which traditionally focused on the most on this issue, has lost its fear that our arms industry might conquer democracy from within. Now, however, we've unfortunately found cause to reconsider Eisenhower's warning. Yeah. So, while the civilian population only in recent years began haggling over deplatforming incidents involving figures like Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos clowns, government agencies had already long been advancing a new theory of international conflict in which the informational landscape is more importantly understood as a battlefield than a forum for exchanging ideas. In this view, spammy ads, junk news, and the sharing of work from disinformation agents like Jones aren't inevitable features of a free internet, but sorties in a new form of a conflict called hybrid warfare. So literally, we were talking about some of those agents when we were talking about the list that Crab was doing just the other day. The shitlib tier list, because some of those people are definitely chaos agents. So,
well, I mean, and new popular stimulant addicts, Chris Mowry and Harry Jizison, Jay Sisson,
right? Those guys are special, huh? So
yeah.
in 1996, just as the internet was becoming part of daily life in America, the U.S. Army published Field Manual 100-6, which spoke of an expanding information domain termed the global information environment that contains information processes and systems that are beyond the direct influence of the military. Military commanders needed to understand that information dominance in the GIE would henceforth be a crucial element for operating effectively. God, this is so dystopian. You'll often see it implied that information operations are only practiced by America's enemies because only America's enemies are low enough and deprived of enough of real firepower to require the use of such tactics, needing as they do to overcome military limitations. But we rarely hear about America's own lengthy history with active measures and information operations. But popular media gives us space to read about the desperate tactics of the Asiatic enemy, perennially described as something like an incurable transcontinental golf cheat. Indeed, part of the new mania surrounding hybrid warfare is the idea that while the American human being is accustomed to living in clear states of war or peace, the Russian, Chinese, or Iranian citizen is born into a state of constant conflict, where war is always ongoing, whether declared or not. Wow. In the face of such adversaries, America's open information landscape is little more than military weakness. I guess from a military perspective.
Gamer wants you to reiterate what IMAT stands for.
Where? IMAT?
IMA. Yeah, TT. Industrial Military.
Oh, well, it's the MIC. It's the Military Industrial Complex, and it's the intelligence. Yeah, the MATT is it's got to do with corporate intelligence. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I'm too much weed, guys. Sorry, it's been a long weekend.
I'll
Thank you.
look it up.
Part of the new mania surrounding hybrid warfare is the right. So military weakness. So in March of 2017, in a hearing of the House Armed Services Committee on Hybrid War, Chairman Mac Thornberry opened the session with ominous remarks, suggesting that in the wider context of history, an America built on constitutional principles of decentralized power might have been badly designed. Oh, okay.
International Military Assistance and Training Team.
There you go. Yeah, that is also dystopian. But that's Americans Canada. Are used to that's our peacekeeping troops that are over in Ukraine right now. So this guy said Americans are used to thinking of a binary state of either war or peace. That's the way our organization's doctrine and approaches are geared. Other countries, including Russia, China, and Iran, use a wider array of centrally controlled, or at least centrally directed, instruments of national power and influence to achieve their objectives. Whether it's contributing to foreign political parties, targeted assassinations of opponents, infiltrating non-uniform personnel such as the Little Green Men, traditional media and social media, influence operations, or cyber-connected activity, all of these tactics and more are used to advance their national interests and most often to damage American national interests. The historical record suggests that hybrid warfare in one form or another may well be the norm for human conflict rather than the exception. Yeah, except we do all that stuff too. And I think that's the point. Around that same time, i.e. shortly after the election of Donald Trump, it was becoming a gospel among the future leaders of the censorship-industrial complex that interference by malign foreign threat actors and the vicissitudes of Western domestic politics must be linked. So everything from Podesta emails to Trump's Rust Belt primary victories to Brexit were to be understood first and foremost as hybrid war events. So this is why the Trump-Russia scandal in the United States will likely be remembered as a crucial moment in the 21st century history, even though the investigation superficially ended a non-story fake news itself. But what the Mueller investigation didn't accomplish in ousting Trump from office, it did accomplish in birthing a vast new public-private bureaucracy devoted to stopping dis, and malinformation. Wow, now there's malinformation, while smoothing public acquiescence to the emergence of a spate of new government agencies with information warfare missions, like that one that I just showed you. The censorship-industrial complex is just the military-industrial complex reborn for the hybrid warfare age. That makes sense. Much like the war industry, pleased to call itself the defense sector, the anti-disinformation complex markets itself as merely defensive, designed to fend off the hostile attacks of foreign cyber adversaries who, unlike us, have military limitations. 800 bases worldwide were not spread thin at all. The CIC, however, is neither wholly about defense, nor even mostly focused on foreign disinformation. It's become instead a relentless, unified messaging system aimed primarily at domestic populations, who are told that political discord at home aids the enemy's undeclared hybrid assault on democracy. Basically, if you question Joe Biden, you're helping Russia or you're helping China. That's effectively what they're saying there. And that's the narrative that's being projected.
You know the thing.
Yeah, we know the thing. Thanks, Joe. They suggest we must rethink old conceptions about rights and give ourselves over to new surveillance techniques like toxicity monitoring. Oh, God.
What does that mean?
Yep. To replace the old free press with editors.
That's like if you get into a room and Britney Spears is playing, you can monitor that.
Well, wait.
Or no, not toxic. Toxicity is
yes, toxic. That's right.
System of a Down.
Boop, boop, right. But okay, you're gonna replace the musty old right. You're gonna replace the musty old free press editors claiming a nose for news with an updated model that uses automated assignment tools like newsworthy claim extraction and submit to frank thought policing mechanisms like the redirect method, which sends ads at online browsers of dangerous content, pushing them toward constructive alternative messages. Jesus. It's ink-sock. It's totally ink-sock.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, what they're talking about is finding all this commitment to a new homogenous politics, which the complex of public and private agencies listed below seeks to capture in something like a unified field theory of neoliberal narrative, which can be perpetually tweaked and amplified online via algorithm and via machine learning. This is what some of the organizations on this list mean when they talk about coming up with a shared vocabulary of information disorder or credibility or media literacy. Basically, anything that they disagree with is illiterate and not credible and disorder. Anti-disinformation groups talk endlessly about building resilience to disinformation, which in practice means making sure the public hears only approved narratives so often that anything else seems frightening or repellent. And audiences are trained to question not only the need for checks and balances, but competition. Competition is increasingly frowned upon, not just in the marketplace of ideas. Like I said, fuck you, Dave Rubin. Fuck you, everybody. Sorry, out there in Republican land that's trying to control narratives. Because that itself, like I said, if Dave Rubin's talking about it, it's got to be outdated. But in the traditional capitalist sense, in the Twitter files, we repeatedly find documents like this unsigned Sphere of Influence review circulated by Carnegie Endowment that wonders aloud if tech companies really need to be competing to get it right. Yeah, thanks. So there it is. Is competition for best practices a good thing? Is it good or bad that Facebook and Twitter have different policies? God, I want to punch these people.
Elbows, bro. Elbows.
Right? Submission. Just choke them out. But no, that's probably a bad thing to say this week.
Yeah.
But
nah, that's fine.
They want to counter influence operations, which of course they want to be the only ones to be implementing the influence operations. They just want to clear the playing field, sons of bitches. In place of competition, the groups we've been tracking favor the concept of shared endeavor. One British group has even started a shared endeavor program in which key stakeholders hash out their disagreements in private, but present a unified front. Sounds like parents. Like, really.
Yep.
That's exactly what they're doing. They're parenting. Who are the leaders of these messaging campaigns? Well, if you care to ask, the groups below are a good place to start. The top 50 list is intended as a resource for reporters and researchers beginning their journey toward learning the scale and ambition of the censorship industrial complex. It's written like a magazine feature. It tries to answer a few basic questions about funding, organization type, history, and especially methodology. Many anti-disinformation groups adhere to the same formulaic approach to research, often using the same hate mapping, guilt by association type analysis to identify wrong thinkers and suppressive persons. That's like Hamilton 68.
Hamilton 69.
There's even a tendency to use what one Twitter file source described as the same hairball graphics, which is interesting. We're going to get into one of those hairball graphics in a minute. Where they compete often is in the area of gibberish verbiage describing their respective and analytical methods. My favorite came from the Public Good Projects, which in a display of predictive skills reminiscent of the unsinkable Titanic, described itself as the BuzzFeed of public health. Ooh.
Which we saw what happened to that too.
Big time oof.
So
okay. Together.
Oopsies.
These
that's a lot of damage.
Yeah. These groups are fast achieving what Eisenhower feared, the elimination of balance between the democratic need for liberalizing laws and institutions and the vigilance required for military preparation. Democratic society requires the nourishment of free debate, disagreement, and intellectual tension, but the groups below seek instead that shared vocabulary to deploy on the hybrid battlefield. They propose to serve as the guardians of that vocabulary. Gatekeepers, yes. Which sounds very much like the scenario Ike outlined in 1961, in which public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific and technological elite. Which is exactly what's happened. So.
What was that?
And that's where I'm going to stop.
I forget what it...
Sort of.
Scroll up a little.
Sure. Public Good Projects?
No.
BuzzFeed of Public Health?
Shared vocabulary, deploy the hybrid battlefield. The It says guards of a cavalier, which sounds very like the scenario Ike outlined. Whatever,
Yes,
I lost it.
bankrupt BuzzFeed. That's right. Okay. So they do go into a literal list of 50 organizations. Now, what I want to just lay out, and I don't want to go into any of them in detail because I think I might actually want to do a series where I dig into each one of these initially, or maybe a few of them per episode. There's 50 companies here, and we've already heard about more. But what they do, and I'm sorry to scroll through it, but first they talk about who they are. Here's a link to their site. Here's the type of organization that they are. And when may have you read about them? Okay. What do they do? Kind of. And then what do they do and what are they selling? What is their characteristic worldview quotes? What is the gibberish verbiage that they like to rely on? Where do they appear in the Twitter files? All of this stuff is referenced here.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good stuff. And then here's their goofy graphage. This is first drafts. All right.
Right.
And who are they closely connected to?
The man of Medan.
And then I love the in sums. With a strong ability to both know and direct emerging trends, and with a large array of elite networks in tow, the IFL, which you've probably never heard of, will continue to serve as one of the key tastemakers in the anti-disinformation field. Again, there are 50...
The tastemakers? What is that? What is that? Where have I heard that before?
Probably in
the
food.
tastemakers.
So look at this. So this
it's like a commercial or something.
I am proposing these be the first people we give to our see something, say something email alias and this was from somebody at Twitter. And they want to give people from all these think tanks and all these organizations unifying email addresses to link them together. A little frightening. No, that's not good at all, Bad Cookies. 100%. Lori Spencer, how are you?
Goofy.
We had an internet hiccup, and hopefully we'll be back. I don't know, but we're talking about censorship, and we're talking about the censorship-industrial complex, and we're going to get into a couple of other areas here that most likely...
meme of the FBI outside Indy's house cutting cables.
The narrative managers are not going to... Now, again, I'm going to go down to number 27, I believe it was. It was somewhere around 27. And I please look at this. This is an encyclopedia of the narrative managers. But I want to call your attention
to
number 27. The Omidyar Group. Our friend Pierre. Not really our friend at all. So, what does he do? And this is where we're going to see this graph. A series of foundations from the founder of eBay, providing a huge amount of funding to the censorship-industrial complex. What a shock. Okay. He's funded projects including the incredibly creepy crypto chat, which peers into private and encrypted messaging systems to weed out misinformation. He's funded the Algorithmic Transparency Institute, which conducts civic listening, an automated collection of data from closed messaging apps in order to combat the problematic content, right? Pierre Omidyar himself is perhaps the most famous traitor to the cause of free speech in the anti-disinformation complex, having once stepped in as to serve as the protector of Snowden's documents, of course, where the Snowden archives now. Glenn Greenwald has them. Look back and you'll see articles describing him as a Bruce Wayne-like figure, a reclusive billionaire for whom the Snowden leaks gave him a cause and an enemy. Okay, and it talks about that he's giving funds to almost all the leading anti-disinformation initiatives. All right, and of course, he is a key funder of The Intercept, or at least was. They've now since claimed to have bought some of it back, but of course his people are on the board and he has still a lot of controlling interests. They did buy back a percentage of the company from First Look Media with a plan to buy it all back, but some of their board members are still directly linked to Omidyar, and his reach and control over the narrative in that organization are certainly strong. And here is that hairball graph. And what they did was they tried to map out his influence sphere and how it intersects and how things are shared amongst different groups to disseminate amongst different groups. All right. And yeah, Nick Pickles, we've talked about Nick Pickles before. He reacts to Home and Your sponsored report on junk news. These are Americans sharing American content.
Mr. Pickles.
They count sharing a URL the same irrelevant if a user was sharing it to go, OMG, look at this rubbish, and debunking it. Mess.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a megaphone and a driving force behind the censorship industrial complex. And there are 50 of these, and this is just the surface. So somebody else tagged me when I posted this link initially on Twitter, and they came back to me and they said, you know, there's a lot more than 50 organizations, and there's this one, and they tagged like 3 others. And I was like, hey, Andrew Lowenthal, I tagged him at NFFECTS, at NAFFECTS on Twitter, Network Effects. Hey, Andrew, what about these? And he's like, yeah, there's actually a ton more, and we just got to the first 50. So thank you.